Hey, welcome to our channel. Make sure to subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss our latest content.
I finished my shift early due to a mistake in the schedule. It was rare, something that almost never happened, but that day Captain Miller had mixed up the off days and let me go by accident. I took it as a sign. For a while now, I'd felt that Corinne was different, kind of distant. Her answers were short, her hugs quick, like she was fulfilling a daily quota. I thought about using the unexpected free time to do something simple. Stop by the French bakery by her office, the one she loved, and have dinner at home. Just the two of us. Nothing grand, just an attempt to get closer again. A gesture that might break the ice that had been slowly creeping into the spaces between us. But when I got home, everything seemed normal, even walking up the creaking front steps. The scent of lavender from the garden Corinne tended so meticulously hung in the air. I unlocked the door, the familiar click echoing in the quiet entryway. I set the box of pastries on the kitchen counter, the sweet smell of almond and butter, a stark contrast to the sterile silence of the house. It was then, as I stood in the kitchen, that I heard it, a muffled laugh, coming from upstairs. From our bedroom. I stood there for a few seconds, confused. Corinne rarely laughed like that anymore, a full, uninhibited sound. I moved slowly, my firefighter instincts kicking in, my body automatically shifting into a state of quiet observation. I crept up the stairs, my hand sliding along the familiar oak banister. The laughter came again, clearer this time, punctuated by a deep male voice I didn't recognize. My heart began to hammer against my ribs, a frantic, trapped bird. I reached the top of the stairs and stood in the hallway, the bedroom door slightly ajar. I slowly pushed it open, and the scene hit me like a backdraft explosion, a wave of heat and pressure that sucked the air from my lungs. Corinne, my wife of 15 years, was naked, wrapped in the arms of a man I only knew from photos and television commercials. Sterling Vance, the celebrity chef, the same one she'd always said she admired for his gastronomic genius, a phrase she'd repeated so often it had become a private joke between us. There he was, in the bed where we had slept together for more than a decade, the bed where we'd created our daughter, Wren. Corinne froze, her eyes wide with a terror that mirrored my own shock. Sterling Vance pulled the sheet up to cover his body, his face a mask of confusion, trying to understand who the man standing in the doorway was. I didn't scream, I didn't charge. My training took over, a cold calm washing over the initial inferno of rage. First, I pulled my phone from my pocket. My hands trembled, but my focus was absolute. I started recording, my eyes fixed on the two of them. "Elias, stop," Corinne whispered, her voice cracking as she tried to cover her face. Sterling scrambled out of bed, fumbling for his clothes. He was flustered, clumsy, his television charm completely evaporated. That's when I dropped the phone on the dresser and went for him, not to hit him, but to impose. I closed the distance until my face was inches from his, the smell of his expensive cologne filling my nostrils, nauseating me. "Get out of my house," I said, my voice low and firm, each word a piece of sharpened steel. He flinched. Now, he backed away, stuttering something incoherent that I either didn't hear or chose to ignore. Corinne screamed from the bed, a useless plea for us to stop. Sterling snatched his clothes from the floor and stumbled out of the room. I followed him, a predator stalking its prey. I opened the front door and watched as the famous chef scrambled across the street, trying to pull his shirt on, which was inside out, all while trying to hide his face. As soon as he disappeared around the corner, I closed the door, the click of the lock sounding like a final, definitive gunshot. Then, I turned and walked back upstairs to face my wife. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, wrapped in the sheet, her face pale and streaked with tears. The room, our room, suddenly felt alien, contaminated. The air was thick with betrayal. "How long?" I asked, keeping my voice steady, betraying none of the seismic chaos erupting inside me. She took a long time to answer, trying to string together broken excuses. "It was a mistake. It means nothing. You've been so distant." Nothing made sense. Nothing she said landed. They were just words, empty casings from a gun that had already fired its fatal shot. I didn't say another word. I just walked to the dresser, picked up my phone, and left. I left the house I had helped build, the life I thought was solid, and drove to the fire station. I parked in my usual spot, and just sat there for what felt like hours, trying to force air back into my lungs. My head was spinning, my heart felt clogged with sludge. I thought about Wren, our daughter. I thought about all the times I had trusted, protected, and believed I was building something that would last. And now, sitting there with my eyes fixed on the steering wheel, I realized that my entire life had crumbled to ash in a matter of minutes. I didn't go home that night. I slept on a cot at the station after stopping by a 24-hour pharmacy to buy something to quiet the noise in my head. My phone kept vibrating, a relentless barrage of messages from Corinne. I didn't open a single one. I needed time. I needed silence. But unlike running away or pretending nothing happened, I knew exactly what I had to do. In my line of work, you learn that you don't put out every fire with water. Some fires only stop when you cut off the fuel line. The next morning, before breakfast, I looked up a lawyer. This wasn't just an affair. It was a betrayal with an address, a name, and a famous face. It was a slap to my dignity, and I would respond accordingly with strategy, with proof, and with unwavering determination. I met with a lawyer named Miss Albright later that day. She was sharp, no nonsense, her office as sterile and professional as a surgeon's theater. I laid it all out, calmly, factually. I showed her the video on my phone. Her expression didn't change, but I saw a flicker of something in her eyes, a professional appreciation for solid evidence. "This is clear cut, Mr. Hayes," she said. "We can move quickly." That was exactly what I wanted to hear. That evening, I talked to Captain Miller and got permission to stay in one of the barracks rest quarters for an indefinite period. It was small, simple, but it was enough. It offered space, silence, and distance from everything that was currently causing me unbearable pain. The calls and texts from Corinne continued. After a few days, she showed up at the station. She looked paler, her eyes sunken. She didn't say a word, just handed the firefighter on duty an envelope with my name on it and left. I waited until the end of my shift to open it. I read her letter in the stark quiet of my temporary room, my shoulders tense and my teeth clenched. She pleaded for forgiveness, called it a moment of madness, and claimed her involvement with Sterling only began after our marriage had cooled down. She wrote about feeling invisible, neglected. She said she didn't blame me, but that she was lost. The letter ended with a plea for me to think about Ren before taking any rash action. That was the only part that truly moved me. Thinking about Ren was unavoidable. She was the steady ground in my shaking world. Ren and I had always been close. She was 17, a creative spirit studying art, and she talked to me about everything. It was me she confided in when she got a bad grade, when she fought with her friends, when she dreamed of traveling the world. Corinne was the stricter parent, the one who pushed for perfection. I was the balance, the safe harbor, and now I had to find a way to explain to my daughter that the harbor where she'd grown up was no longer safe. Corinne's infidelity wasn't just marital, it was familial. It was a crack in the foundation of everything Ren believed to be solid. I knew this because a week later, Ren called me, her voice trembling. She'd come home from school to find my closets empty. My scent in the house had already started to fade. Corinne had tried to explain things carefully, but my daughter understood the essentials. Her parents were separating. The next morning, she came to the station. I met her outside, under the harsh morning Sunday. The moment she saw me, she ran into my arms and cried, a deep, shuddering sob that broke my heart. She didn't ask questions at first. She just clung to me and whispered, "Dad, just tell me what's happening now." I took her to a small, quiet cafe nearby, and I told her everything. No embellishments, no angry tirades, no cruel details about the scene I'd walked in on. Just the truth. I told her I saw her mother with another man, and that I didn't intend to go back home. Ren was shocked into silence. Her silence was louder than any sentence could have been. After a few minutes, she whispered, her voice barely audible, "You're not going to fight for her?" "The fighting is done, sweetie," I answered, my voice rough with emotion. "I did that fight inside myself. Now it's time to protect what's left, and that includes you." She nodded, wiping her eyes. Then she took out her phone, took a deep breath, and showed me a picture. It was her, smiling, standing next to a handsome young man with dark, curly hair. "I wanted to tell you about him," she said, a faint blush on her cheeks. "His name is Reese. I've been seeing him for a few months." I smiled, a genuine smile for the first time in what felt like a lifetime. "He's a lucky guy, Ren." Then, my eyes drifted to a second photo she swiped to. It was a picture of Reese with his arm around his father. My smile froze. The blood drained from my face. The man smiling next to Reese, the man whose face I now associated with the destruction of my life, was Sterling Vance. The shock was a physical blow. The world tilted on its axis. My daughter, my innocent Ren, was dating the son of the man who had shattered our family. "Dad, what is it?" Ren asked, her brow furrowed with concern. I couldn't speak. The cosmic cruelty of it was breathtaking. Ren explained that she'd been with Reese for several months but hadn't told us yet. She'd only said she was getting to know someone older but kind. She saw the look on my face, the recognition dawning, and her expression shifted from confusion to panic. She realized, in that horrifying moment, that her new boyfriend was now inextricably linked to the source of her father's pain. I grabbed my daughter's hand, my own shaking. "Ren, listen to me," I said, forcing calm into my voice. "This is complicated. But our mistakes, your mother's and mine, are ours. You don't have to pay for them." But the damage was done. In the days that followed, Ren withdrew. Our conversations became stilted. Corinne, seeing an opening, moved in. She began to subtly change the narrative, hinting to Ren that I was being radical, that I wouldn't listen to explanations, that I had always put my job above our family. Confused and torn, Ren began to pull away from me. My calls went to voicemail. My texts were answered with single words or just an emoji. I felt like I was watching my daughter drift out to sea, and I was stranded on the shore, unable to reach her. The divorce papers were ready. Before they were served, I sought out Ren. I asked her to meet me at the park where we used to go when she was a little girl. We sat on our old bench, the one overlooking the duck pond. I explained everything again, this time with the calm that comes after the initial shock has passed. I don't want to put you against your mother, I told her, my eyes locked on hers. But she made a choice, Ren. And choices have consequences. I'm dealing with mine. I just hope you can find your own path without carrying burdens that aren't yours to carry. She listened, her expression unreadable. At the end, she asked the one question that had clearly been haunting her. Do you hate him, Reese? I answered honestly. I don't know him. I need time to separate the man from the boy, the father from the son. She just nodded and left. From then on, our contact became even colder. I, the man used to putting out the most difficult fires, had discovered the worst kind of all, the one that starts inside your own home and burns through the ones you love. Even as the legal process moved forward, something about Sterling Vance gnawed at me. The man who had entered my house, laid in my bed, and then fled like a coward, he wasn't just an opportunistic seducer. There was something more to him, a kind of structural rot beneath the polished surface. I felt it in my gut. The same instinct that tells me when a floor is about to give way in a burning building was telling me that there was more to this story. I wouldn't be able to rest, to truly move on, until I understood who I was really dealing with. So, I decided to do something I never thought I would. I hired someone. I found a private investigator, a former federal agent named Calloway who specialized in financial fraud. I met him in a nondescript office downtown. I told him everything: the names, the faces, the story, the companies Sterling Vance managed. I'm not looking for more dirt on the affair, I stated clearly. That's over. I want you to look at his business, be discreet, focus on the money, especially the fiscal records of his restaurants. Calloway nodded, his face impassive. He took my case. A few weeks later, he came back with a file. The information inside immediately raised an alarm. There were obvious discrepancies between the declared profits and the real values. The cash flow through Sterling's flagship restaurants was far higher than what was appearing on his tax filing. Calloway presented documents, bank extracts, and evidence of transactions with ghost suppliers companies that existed only on paper. I read each page carefully, a cold, methodical anger replacing the hot, personal rage I'd felt before. This was so much bigger than an infidelity case. This was a man building an empire on a foundation of fraud. I took a deep breath. I had found the fuel line. This was the source of the fire. I gathered the complete file from Calloway, paid him for his excellent work, and contacted a friend from high school, Marcus, who now worked as a senior agent in the IRS's Criminal Investigation Division. We met for a quiet coffee. I didn't mention my name or Corinne's. I didn't ask for favors. I just handed him a thick manila envelope. There's something in there worth investigating, I said, and then I left, without expecting recognition. The justice I sought wasn't public. It was personal, and it was now underway. It didn't take long. A few weeks later, small articles began popping up in the business section of the local paper about an ongoing investigation into a renowned local chef. At first, names were kept hidden, but the connection to Sterling's restaurants was obvious to anyone paying attention. He started missing public commitments. His PR team canceled interviews. An investor publicly broke their contract. When the news finally gained a face and a surname, Sterling Vance had already lost 2 major corporate sponsors and was officially named by the Treasury Department. The accusation was clear: felony tax evasion, millions of dollars hidden over the past several years. The case became criminal. Corinne panicked. I heard through the legal channels that Sterling had distanced himself from her almost immediately, trying desperately to protect what was left of his image. The two of them were never seen together again. Ren, who had been distant from me since our conversation in the park, found out about Sterling's arrest from the news. I can only imagine her horror. She tried to talk to Reese, but he sent her only a single, short message: I need time to understand all of this. That was the last time he responded. He disappeared from social media, canceled the messaging app they used to talk, and simply vanished from her life. The emotional fracture in my daughter was brutal. On top of seeing her mother's affair exposed, now the boy she loved had cut all contact without a proper explanation, tainted by the sins of his father. I received the news of Sterling's formal arrest with a mix of grim satisfaction and profound relief. I didn't celebrate. I just breathed deeply, feeling a great weight lift from my shoulders. The man who had destroyed my family was now facing the weight of his own mistakes. What started with adultery in my bedroom ended with handcuffs and headlines. It was a cycle closing in a way I could never have anticipated. Throughout this entire period, Corinne tried discreetly to get closer to Ren, sending messages, offering rides, buying gifts, but nothing seemed to work. My daughter suspected every gesture, seeing it as an attempt by her mother to clean up her own image. Ren was too hurt to pretend everything was normal. I, on the other hand, maintained a certain distance. I respected my daughter's space but remained present. I made sure her art course was paid for. I checked her report cards online, and I quietly attended her student art exhibitions, standing in the back of the room without making my presence known. I spoke little, but I demonstrated through actions. I knew that any emotional pressure could push her even further away, so I chose to wait. I would wait for her to come to me. Slowly, very slowly, our relationship began to mend. It was still marked by silence, but there was less distance in it. One afternoon, she showed up at the station unannounced. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but she was calm. We just sat in my small room for a while, not saying much. Before she left, she turned to me and said, her voice soft, "Thanks for not throwing him in my face." I understood immediately. She was talking about Reese, about the fact that I hadn't made the boy an enemy, even when I had every reason to. The words moved me more than she could ever know. It was the first time since the whole world had exploded that I felt my daughter still saw me as the same dad. The trust hadn't been destroyed, just badly damaged, and wounds, with time and care, can heal, even the deepest ones. The following months were a strange mix of relief and emptiness. Sterling Vance had been convicted and was serving time. Corinne had withdrawn completely, selling the house and moving to a smaller apartment across town, and Ren, though slowly reconnecting with me, still carried a quiet sadness that I couldn't reach. I continued living at the station. The room was small and uncomfortable, but it was safe, practical, and far from the memories of a house that now belonged to a painful past. On my days off, I took long walks without any destination, ate in diners I'd never visited before, and sometimes, when I had the courage, I'd open the photo album on my phone, trying to pinpoint the exact moment when everything started to fall apart. It was on one of those days that I met Lena for the first time. I was sitting in a cafe, almost finished with my coffee, when I heard a polite request to share my table since the place was full. It was a woman in her early 40s, with a folded lab coat on her arm and 2 thick textbooks in her bag. We talked very little during that first meeting, just polite exchanges about the weather and the quality of the coffee. She thanked me, I smiled, and she left. 2 weeks later, our paths crossed again, this time at a local animal adoption fair organized by a nonprofit. Lena was there as a volunteer vet. I recognized her face, and she recognized mine. We talked a bit more this time. I learned she was a veterinarian, divorced for almost 3 years, and the mother of 2 teenagers. Like me, she was learning how to navigate the ruins of what was once a family. The connection happened effortlessly. There were no grand plans, no scheduled dinners, no anxious text messages, just casual meetings that gradually became more frequent. We'd grab coffee, walk through the park, or help out at community events. She listened without judging. I asked without pressuring. Each conversation was like a brick being placed carefully, building something that might, one day, become a new home. Lena didn't pretend that everything was easy, and that's what drew me to her. She spoke openly about the challenges with her kids, the insecurity of starting over, the fear of trusting someone again. I understood every word, every pause. We were on the same page, living through different stories but with similar scars. Ren met Lena on a Saturday afternoon, without any warning. She'd stopped by my new, small apartment to drop something off. The reception was polite. No big smiles, but no coldness either. I didn't force any closeness. Lena didn't try to impress her. They were just natural. The following week, Ren sent me a text. She's calm, better than I expected. It was a small thing, but for me, it meant the world. It was a sign that maybe, with time, my daughter could accept that her dad was trying to rebuild something, not to replace what was lost, but to find a new meaning in what was left. Our meetings with Lena intensified. Together, we started attending more community events, helping at soup kitchens, and even organizing a toy collection campaign for underprivileged children. In these activities, I found a peace I hadn't felt in a very long time. It wasn't about big achievements. It was about doing good with someone who was grounded and wholehearted. Lena's kids, a boy of 16 and a girl of 14, started getting to know me. At first, they were reserved, which was understandable. Over time, I helped them with their homework, took them to the movies, and watched the older one's soccer games. It all happened without rush, without impositions. It was a light, genuine coexistence, the way it should be. One regular Friday night, we were all at Lena's house. I had gradually started leaving the barracks behind, spending more and more time there. We were all sitting around the dinner table, me, Lena, her 2 kids, and Ren. It was Ren's 18th birthday, and she had asked for everyone to be together. I held back my emotions throughout the dinner, seeing my daughter, my beautiful, resilient Ren, blow out the candles on her cake, sitting next to the children of the woman I was learning to love, and laughing naturally with them. It was more symbolic than any legal document or grand declaration. There, in the warm glow of the candlelight, I understood that even though the family I had built with Corinne had crumbled, it was still possible to have a home, a new one, forged from new bonds and new stories. Late one night, a few months later, I was closing the front door after another family dinner. I looked into the living room. Ren was lying on the couch, showing something on her phone to Lena's kids, and they were all laughing. Lena was in the kitchen, humming softly as she collected the dishes. This wasn't the life I had planned all those years ago. It wasn't the picture I had in my head of what my future would look like, but with all its flaws and scars, it was the most real, the most true thing I had now. The betrayal had been a breaking point. Yes, it was a fire that had burned my old life to the ground, but it was also the beginning of a profound transformation. And in the end, standing there in the quiet doorway of this new life, I realized that the freedom I had been searching for wasn't about revenge, or exposure, or punishment. It was about forgiving in silence, moving forward with courage, and allowing life to bloom again in a way I would never have predicted.